Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Inshallah, we'll begin with the recitation of the Holy Quran by Sister Asiya. Please welcome her with a salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali.
Okay, go ahead. Say Bismillah. ولم يكن له اللهم صل على محمد وعلى
Salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Inshallah, we'll proceed with the lecture by respected scholar Sheikh Mahdi. Please welcome him with another salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة على رسول الله وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين وأصحابه المنتجبين سيما بقية الله في الأرضين عجل الله تعالى فرجه الشريف ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين إلى قيام يوم الدين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي اللهم انصر الإسلام وأهله وانصر من نصر الدين واخذل الكفار وأهله. Inshallah, tonight I'd like to continue a portion of the reading from the letter of 31 of Nahj al-Balagha. I promise tonight we'll be reading a little bit more, so we'll cover much more of the letter. And then, inshallah, I'll share a few words on the Yawm al-Quds, the anniversary that we commemorate the plight of the Palestinian people, but also it's a day of solidarity with all those who are being oppressed in the world, and how we as Muslims are responsible to respond to their calls for help. So in the letter, we're speaking about social responsibility in younger people, and specifically we were speaking about leadership and how a trait of a good leader is that they take initiative. But also the Imam says that when you strive in the way of Allah, you strive in a way that is worthy of Him. And just take for granted that people are going to censure you, people are going to criticize you, people are going to try to destroy your public image, people are going to try and misinterpret what you say. Everything is going to be done to try and derail your efforts in advancing the cause of Islam, and what that is really the betterment of humankind. So prepare yourself for that, not just that, but the Imam says to plunge yourself into hardship. So he says, wherever truth may lie, prepare yourself to plunge into the difficulties because of that. وَخُذِ الْغَمَرَاتِ لِلْحَقِّ حَيْثُ كَانَ. He says, وَتَفَقَّهْ فِي الدِّينِ وَعَوِّدْ نَفْسَكَ التَّصَبُّرَ عَلَى الْمَكْرُوهِ وَنِعْمَ الْخُلُقُ التَّصَبُّرُ فِي الْحَقِّ. And become learned in the religion, accustom yourself to have patience and perseverance through hardships, as perseverance for truth's sake is a marvelous trait. So we ended last night's talk on this point of, given that there is so much of a need to advance the cause of goodness, of virtue in the world, one of the things that we're lacking truly are leaders who are not just qualified, but are committed to advancing these ideals. So we asked ourselves this question, and we want to be a little analytical here of why is it that we have that shortage? We have plenty of very resourceful, incredibly brilliant younger people. Why is it that they shy away from kind of taking leadership positions or being groomed to fill leadership positions to advance the needs of the community and then larger society too? We spoke about different things, but we want to just kind of, again, draw our attention to what the Imam is saying here in the letter. Well, some of the general things of why people may not be drawn towards, when I say, I mean like kind of our younger people who really do have the personality and the potential. Well, one of the things that we often observe, we may even hear, and it's a common response for people to have, is they don't really know how to lead. I don't know what it means to be a leader. I don't know what it means to, assume a position of community leadership or vision. So because of that, they are hesitant and they are afraid, kind of, to take on a role that they don't fully understand, and that hesitation stops them. But of course, like anything in life, there's a lot of learning on the job. And like we mentioned yesterday, one of the great ways of encouraging younger people to assume leadership positions is to set a good example, allow them to come and observe and shadow and take junior positions of leadership. And as they develop, then they can, kind of transition into the role of a kind of the main leader, the senior leader, or they can take on their own projects. So they need that experience. And a lot of times that's what's keeping people behind. Other reasons are because there's almost like an emphasis on specialization in today's world. You'll be most efficient in your education, in your career, if you kind of designate for yourself one or at least a field of study that you're interested in, that you can become an expert in, and you circumscribe yourself to only pretty much producing and producing and contributing to society in that one field. I'm an engineer and I only work on engineering projects that draw to my specialty of, I don't know, being an electrical engineer. Those are the only things that I work on. The other person says, oh, no, I'm only an artist. The other person says, oh, I'm only an accountant. The other person says. So what happens is, not only do people end up becoming one-dimensional, but they're encouraged almost. So there's this tension between building the holistic human being, educating the whole person, and between those who just want to engage in a very kind of narrow specialization. So you see these conflicts mainly within the realm of education. And you have these competing philosophies of how our children should engage within an educational system. But of course, as Islam tells us, we are concerned with educating the whole person, which means that we want as much as possible to allow our children to have not only holistic educational experiences, but to build them to be individuals who are multidimensional. So for them not to think in terms of, well, that's not my area and that's not my job. If you ask any person within any given community to ask them, hey, listen, we need leaders within the community, they'll tell you, well, that's not really my profession, my specialization. This is what I do. And they can list a series of tasks that they can do in their field. So the resolution to the problem is one of two things. Either we occupy these positions with people whose careers and professions and specializations are community leadership, community planning, urban planning. All of these things are there, by the way. These are specializations. People can get degrees, advanced degrees in these things. Like many of the humanities and social sciences, those are unfortunately neglected within Muslim communities, immigrant communities, because they don't have a very clear and very rewarding, if you want to call it, career paths. Because of that, people are hesitant or completely, they're just not even aware that certain things exist. So either the solution is to encourage and kind of fund and support people who will go into those fields, which is good and needed, or people, kind of take it upon themselves to accept that they are multifunctional and they can learn and they can grow and they can, kind of fill the needs that the community has. So there's nothing wrong with you being a journalist and also being a leader within the community. There's nothing wrong with you being a nurse practitioner and also assuming a leadership position within the community. But it requires obviously some time and some experience, some dedication to ensure that you kind of will fit in and be able to kind of successfully move things forward. the third thing, one of the things that really bothers me is what's generally referred to as the bystander effect, where people adopt a mindset will say, well, it's, not only is it not my job to do it, it may be my job, but someone else will do it. There's all these people who are observing something that needs to be done. Some people may think, well, why do I have to do it? Almost kind of like trying to shift the responsibility to someone else. And sometimes people just really think that, oh, there must be someone better than I am, more qualified than I am, better suited than I am. So I don't want to come and take that position because I don't want to, I want to allow the other person who's better than me. So which leads to this kind of vicious cycle of everyone else thinking that another person will do it, and at the end of the day, what happens? Nothing gets done. So kind of we have to combat that bystander effect too. I can't tell you how many times I've had conversations with very younger people, incredibly intelligent, seem to know how the world works. But when you start speaking to them about community needs, about the advancement of Muslim needs, raising of Muslim generations, younger Muslim generations, for whatever reason, there's a disconnect there. They don't understand that the building and the maintenance and the advancement of these infrastructures and institutions requires commitment, requires people to do it. It's just lost on them. It's always perplexed me. One of the other things that I've seen psychologically with younger people is that either they have a low tolerance or they have no tolerance for things that are uncertain. And I can tell you from personal experiences, there's a lot of uncertainty in this kind of work. And for many people, that's really not welcome because it may bring about stress and anxiety. And for the most part, people, if they can help it, would like to be in positions that there's a task that's clear, they can perform it, but without adding to that stress and anxiety, which comes back to that same point that the Imam is making, right? Imam is saying, plunge into hardship for truth's sake, wherever it may be. This is one of the areas that you will plunge into hardship because there's nothing easy about preparing yourself or even assuming one of these positions of leadership. So again, it comes back to that attitude. And one of the last things that I've seen with younger people, especially if there isn't communal support, they just lack confidence. No one's there really to not just encourage them, but make them feel good about the fact that they've taken initiative, or for them to be supportive and constructive when they do have failures, and encourage them to not allow those failures to kind of stop them from continuing this pursuit of being a better leader. We had projects where younger people, through their own kind of their passion, their commitment to the deen, tried something. In some respects, it was a success, but maybe they had, something. There was an oversight. There was a, failure in its in how the program was run or how. So people become incredibly critical and myopic. They become incredibly judgmental, and there's so much pressure that's put on a person. The person's like, well, it's just really not worth my time. Why would I put myself through this? It's like you're not appreciated, and people are not pleased with anything that you do. Why would you do that? So again, the Imam is saying we need to kind of groom our younger people, or at least a faction of them within the community, to be on that trajectory to take these leadership positions. And they need that perseverance. That'll help them kind of get through. All right, so that's kind of what I had to say here. There's that one point about becoming learned in the religion. I've spoken about this. If I'm not wrong, I think even within this congregation, but my 2 cents is that becoming learned in the religion doesn't require a person to become a scholar in the religion. Any person who's engaging with religious knowledge, they all have different functions. A scholar's function is to is a certain thing. A cleric's function, if you want to call that, or a functional imam, their role is a certain thing. And you have other people who are still serving the Muslim community. They need to also be learned in the religion. And what does that mean to be learned? First, they need to understand the larger worldview, kind of the foundations of the faith. And when I say foundations, not just like in a very dry, memorizing theoretical. No, but understand what Islam is advocating for, and how does that, kind of hold up to other competing models. It's not just about saying, well, you're a Muslim, this is what you need to know about Islam. It's to enter Islam into the arena of all these competing ideologies and all these competing approaches to life, and then begin to kind of help the person understand what the Islamic approach, what the Islamic position, what the Islamic practice is, and why that is equal or superior to these other competing systems and models. And that way, when the person has gone through that, they can say, all right, well, we're looking to implement an Islamic educational system. I understand what that means. I know how that's different from other educational systems and philosophies. And I'm committed to this project because it solves these problems. The person's informed. So if there is a struggle, if there is a challenge, the person is able to kind of power through those because they've understood the value of what they're doing. When that's not clear, then people start looking at things pragmatically, and they say, well, a Muslim school is just not financially prudent. We're spending a lot of money for something that doesn't offer so much more. And sometimes that argument may be true. If you have a Muslim school that does everything the same way that a normal public school does, and then just sprinkles it with maybe one class or two classes, doesn't even have a full Muslim student body, doesn't have a full Muslim teaching staff, doesn't have a full administrative staff, is not built on any sort of educational philosophy or practice, doesn't have any spiritual component, yeah, it may not be financially prudent. Students will have to pay, upward of $6,000, $7,000 per year per student. And then, just to fund the school, you're going to need community support of, hundreds of thousands of dollars. If you want to attract any sort of talent, you want to retain talent as far as teaching and all that. So someone's like, why should we do that? Why should we spend, over 10 years, why should we spend $5 million for an Islamic school? That money can be, spent doing other things, or it can be just given to people who are less fortunate. I don't need to send my kid to a Muslim school. $5 million, we can go, we can fully support a village in a Muslim majority country that people are really struggling. Let's put the money to good use there. But if a person understands what the Islamic educational model is, what kind of student they're trying to groom, what does it mean for them to be educated, and what they're hoping to produce in comparison to the products of other educational systems, other schools, the person understands that and values that and sees the results of that in other places, then they're fully committed to the fact that we can make this happen here, and we need this because these are the risks if we don't. So becoming learned in the religion allows you to do that. It allows you to appreciate what Islam has to say, and then it kind of it serves as a springboard for you to start working on contemporary and contextual problems in collaboration with the scholar, in collaboration with the sheikh, in collaboration with the clergy, in collaboration with teachers, everyone. You understand the value of what you're doing. That's what I found to be most effective with younger people. We're not trying to sell them anything. We're not trying to force anything upon them. The Quran is very clear. Telling the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, you can't force anyone to believe. Had God wanted, God could have made everyone believe. It's just not the approach. Because it in many ways, it just defeats the purpose. The person has to accept and act out of their own volition and their own sense of commitment and conviction. Without that, you're doomed for failure. So when I say help the people become learned in the religion, that's what it means. Helping our younger people understand what their needs are in life, not dictating it to them, informing them. And then once you present a problem, present a need, then they have to start looking for a solution. Right? So then you say, this is what Islam has to offer. These are other models. What do you think? Which one are you looking to adopt? Then let them kind of work through it. and be there to support them to turn that theory into action. When it has to do with family relationships, when it has to do with friendships, when it has to do with how we spend our free time, when it has to do with our spending, when it has to do with our career choices, when it has to do with our business practices, all of these things. Islam has a certain approach. Here are competing approaches. Quran says in Surah Al-Mutaffifin, Bismillah ar-Rahman, وَيْلٌ لِلْمُطَفِّفِينَ الَّذِينَ إِذَا اكْتَالُوا عَلَى النَّاسِ يَسْتَوْفُونَ وَإِذَا كَالُوهُمْ أَوْ وَزَنُوهُمْ يُخْسِرُونَ. That's a standard, a practice within trade. This is what Islam has to say. When you're trading with people, you have the opportunity to amplify your earnings, your profits, by taking advantage of other people. You can do that. Or you can kind of you can limit your profits through a more ethical and moral code of trade. The person will not know, but this is what Islam is saying, and it's saying it's good for you for this, and that reason. Now, in the real world, this young person is challenged in the way that they, conduct business with other people. I have the opportunity right now, without anyone knowing, without being exposed, to take advantage of another person. Why should I not do it? So, again, becoming learned in the religion is about finding all of these practical points within their lives of how Islam responds to it, and why they are also tasked with making a decision. So that's what it means in becoming learned in the religion. They don't have to sit in Hawza studies and seminary studies. You don't have to send them to Qom or Najaf. It would be nice for them to experience those things. That's not the point here. But there needs to be some kind of like a serious revamping of the religious educational model. A lot of it has to be done at home, but much of it also has to be done outside of the home, which means it's either within the masjid, that requires the younger people to frequent there. It has to be within their schools. It's tough if they don't do it within the 5 days and you ask them to come an extra 6th day or 7th day. And then you have to have continuing education to ensure that not just when they're 13 or 14, but once they get into their later teenage years or in their early 20s, you're still there to provide support and education for the questions that they need answered. Like I can't count how many people who are, my age, young professionals, just the concept of charitable giving. It's not even charitable giving, just zakat. The tax on your money, right? The tithe that you have to pay. Like you have to bend over backwards to convince them. Oh, I have to pay I have to be taxed again. I'm already being taxed by the federal government, state, and then the Islam is going to tax me too? No way. I'm not paying zakat. I'm not paying khums. Who deals with this money anyways? Where does it go? How's it spent? It's not convincing to me. That whole kind of institution of charitable giving, that whole institution, it crumbles. Because why? Because there isn't a good foundation as far as being learned in the religion goes. Let me read the portions that I promised I would, just to make a little progress, and I want to come back to this point to connect it with the Quds. Imam then states, وَأَلْجِئْ نَفْسَكَ فِي أُمُورِكَ كُلِّهَا إِلَى إِلَهِكَ. In all matters concerning you, entrust yourself to God. فَإِنَّكَ تُلْجِئُهَا إِلَى كَهْفٍ حَرِيزٍ. For you will have entrusted yourself to a protected cave. وَمَانِعٍ عَزِيزٍ, and a impregnable fortress. Again, being in a relationship with God, and what it means to entrust yourself to God. Tawakkul, right? Tawakkul is, in a nutshell, to trust the system. And we understand in the context of law representation, right? If you're going to a court of law and you don't understand the law very well, you're not proficient in the law, you hire a lawyer to represent you. And you understand this lawyer to have your best interest at heart. Why else would you hire them? So this person who's proficient in the law will help you get to the destination that you want, and that destination is either to win the case or to be acquitted. So you trust them. Even though they may do things that you don't fully understand, may sometimes even be conflicting, because you have trust in them, you'll trust the process. So you do tawakkul. You kind of hand over your course of action to a person that you think is better suited. In religious terms and spiritual terms, when we do tawakkul of Allah, tawakkul ala Allah, it means that we acknowledge that in our life's affairs, we are entrusting that roadmap, that regimen, that plan to a person who better understands and has our best interest at heart. And because of that, we trust the system. Now, the Imam is saying, if you do that correctly, then you've entrusted yourself to a protected cave, an impregnable fortress. You should have no doubt in your mind. You should sleep easy at night. Even if things don't look like they're going your way, trust the system. Things will turn out okay, always. Again, easier said than done. وَأَخْلِصْ فِي الْمَسْأَلَةِ لِرَبِّكَ. Ask only of your Lord. Have that, that purity, that sincerity. فَإِنَّ بِيَدِهِ الْعَطَاءُ وَالْحِرْمَانُ. For only He has the power to give and to withhold. وَأَكْثِرِ الْإِسْتِخَارَةِ. And increase your asking of the best. Istikhara means to request the best, request goodness, to seek goodness. So istikhara can either mean that to strive within one's own means to do the best. You're tasking yourself. Be good, seek good. Sometimes istikhara means, asking God to provide the best for you, to seek goodness and virtue through requesting it from God. And sometimes istikhara has kind of a more technical meaning, and the term here is what is common in our practices of consulting the Quran or consulting Allah through the Quran, sometimes through other means, tasbih, of what to do, kind of in a situation where we are unsure how to proceed. There's a lot to say on this issue. I'm not really an expert on that, so because of that, I'll refrain from saying so. But for the most part, when we speak about istikhara, we're speaking about that second meaning of asking Allah to give us the best, not just, for example, consulting the Quran. Then the Imam says, وَتَفَهَّمْ وَصِيَّتِي. And comprehend my exhortations, this will. وَلَا تَذْهَبَنَّ عَنْكَ صَفْحًا. And don't allow it to pass you by, which means heedlessly. There's something really important here. Don't just read it and say, well, that was nice. So take it seriously. فَإِنَّ خَيْرَ الْقَوْلِ مَا نَفَعَ. For indeed, the best of speech is that which benefits you. وَاعْلَمْ أَنَّهُ لَا خَيْرَ فِي عِلْمٍ لَا يَنْفَعُ وَلَا يُنْتَفَعُ بِعِلْمٍ لَا يَحِقُّ تَعَلُّمُهُ. And know that there is no good in knowledge that does not benefit, and one cannot benefit from knowledge that is not appropriate to learn. Again, it's asking his son, and we're asking our children to be wise in where and how they spend their time. Even when it pertains to what they can learn. There are a lot of things we can learn in life. There are a lot of skills that we can acquire. But the Imam is saying, allow its benefit. And when it says benefit, think in a religiously utilitarian sense. What utility will this provide you to be a better Muslim? To strengthen your relationship with Allah and serve the cause of Islam. Those three things. Not in and of itself. Everything, for the most part, has some benefit. It's about prioritizing. So don't engage in speech that is not beneficial. We generally call that lahu. It's speech that is inconsequential. but also don't waste your time doing things, learning things that don't really have benefit in those three areas. And I can't stress them enough, especially the last one. For each and every one of us, there's a potential to learn. Learn those things that we can use to serve our own families and serve the larger Muslim community. So kind of leave those areas of knowledge, those learning, at least leave them for a later time if there's something of higher priority there. And I'll read this next section because it's to review it. We've covered the core content of it. أي بني إني لما رأيتني قد بلغت السن ورأيتني أزداد وهنا بادرت بوصيتي إليك وأوردت خصالا منها قبل أن يجعل بي أجلي دون أن أفضي إليك بما في نفسي. The Imam says that my son, whereas I find myself having reached old age, and I find myself increasingly feeble, I've sought to preempt with this exhortation, with this will, certain events beyond my control, among which are these things. Number one, the death may come to me before I'm able to communicate the things that are in my soul to you, or that my mind may deteriorate as my body has. It says, أو يسبقني إليك بعد غلبات الهوى وفتن الدنيا فتكون كالسعب النفور. Or I'm afraid that some overwhelming desire or a trial of the temporal world may reach you before I do, such that you become like a recalcitrant, flighty steed. And he says, وَإِنَّمَا قَلْبُ الْحَدَثْ كَالْأَرْضِ الْخَالِيَةِ مَا أُلْقِيَ فِيهَا مِنْ شَيْءٍ قَبِلَتُهُ. And indeed, the heart of a child is like a fallow ground, uncultivated ground. It takes whatever seed is cast in it. فَبَادَرْتُ بِالْأَدَبْ قَبْلَ أَنْ يَقْسُوَ قَلْبُكَ. So I rushed to sow discipline in you before your heart hardened. ويشتغل لبك لتستقبل بجد رأيك من الأمر ما قد كفاك أهل التجارب بغيته وتجربته. Before your heart hardened and your mind is distracted, have to get in there first before other things come and occupy that. Once your child has been, fully immersed into a certain way of life, it's really difficult for us to change it. So I rush to that you may address with undivided attention knowledge of whose pursuit and experience those with experience have sufficed you. In this way, you have been relieved of the burden of pursuit and the need to directly experience many of these things. For from our vast experience, what we once found now come to you, and matters that may have been murky for us are now made lucid for you. So again, the Imam is saying, there's an urgency in me sharing this. And that urgency is to communicate to you, first of all, what is available to us, because that's invaluable. Second, before, while you're still in a position to kind of value this, a time may come that you're consumed with other things, or that you've been sold on other worldviews, and because of that, I won't even be able to speak to you because you don't want to listen to what I have to say. Again, it's a frustration that many parents share with us that, my kids are not listening to me. I'm saying I'm trying to get in before that time happens so we can communicate with one another. And I'll end just with a few minutes saying this, that the last Friday of Shahr Ramadan has been designated as Yawm al-Quds. Yawm al-Quds is a day that's not just focused on the plight of the Palestinian people, Muslim and non-Muslim, but really because it epitomizes the struggle in the world for the establishment of justice, and for us to learn from our experiences. That's one of the great, ironies or unfortunate realities of what's happening right now in those occupied territories. It's never again. We would hope that, all of humankind would remember that and take heed to not repeat the mistakes that were made in the past and expose us really as just being one and the same when there's wind in our sails and when things are going in our favor, that we will repeat and perpetuate the crimes of the past. That's incredibly unfortunate, and it's a sign that we're not learning. We haven't learned. But what I want to focus on is really for this concept of Yom al-Quds to be appreciated by our younger people. And there are plenty of examples, beyond Palestine. Your child may say, "Well, I don't understand. It's very complicated. Both sides are at fault." Okay, fine. You're not able to make a convincing argument there. Go look at many other examples of what's happening in the world. It's really a call to the awakening of the conscious, the collective Muslim conscious, that it's not acceptable for there to be any number of Muslims in the world, let alone more than 1 billion Muslims in the world, that have the religious, ideological, theological, ethical, behavioral resources to respond to the problems of the world, and they fail to. And again, for different reasons. There may be certain constraints. There may be other problems. What I want to say is, for our younger people in this part of the world, we are privileged to live in a time and a place that allows us access to things that may not be available to many others in the world. I don't say this to make anyone feel guilty, just to acknowledge the responsibility that comes with it. We as people in positions of privilege are expected to produce something that is, kind of equal and commensurate to the opportunities that we've been given. For our children, ourselves and our children and the generations that follow, these things need to be priorities. Now you may say, "Oh, I can't change the outcome of something that's been going on for, almost 100 years. All right, well, find something that you can resolve. Find something wrong in the world that you can resolve. Run to the aid of a person that you feel has been neglected or disenfranchised or is voiceless, and be a voice for them. And don't just do it when it's kind of popular within society. That's what Islam tasks us to do. So Yom al-Quds, you may say, "Okay, I don't really agree with going out in the middle of downtown and protesting." Fine. No one said you have to protest to participate in Yom al-Quds or anything that kind of shares the same message. It's about finding an outlet that allows you to address the problems of the world and be intentional about it. Now, in this instance, the birth of Yom al-Quds was to say this is one of the most egregious cases of injustice the world needs to respond to, and the Muslim world, because of its many failings. You may identify something else. Fine, but let not the core of the message be lost. And the other thing I want to say, again, this requires a lot more time to expand. Please, even in your selection of, kind of helping with the problems of the world, make sure the privilege is there to check too. Don't go after first world problems that, we need to fight against these injustices. With all due respect, those things can wait. That has to be a priority, right? If a person doesn't have access to food or healthcare or clean water or education or whatever, maybe let's not worry about things that are that come much later. Let's address kind of like the core of the issues. So that's what I think this Yawm al-Quds should stand for our younger generation. If there's a disconnect between what it means to you and what it means to the larger Muslim community, fine. But don't allow that to become a reason for them not to learn and then not to participate in what Yawm al-Quds is. It's a test towards the end of the month of Ramadan to see how much of what we've been saying and reading and thinking about and asking God for, how much of that was genuine? How much of that was understood? Or was it all really just a selfish act of God, give me, me. Right? That's not what this month is about. So Yawm al-Quds is to say, are you ready to plunge into hardship for truth's sake? Are you ready to seek out that discomfort and difficulty for the sake of your own development and the betterment of other people? Yawm al-Quds represents that. So I hope in years to come, we're able to revive not just that classical sense of Yawm al-Quds, but also how it translates to the campaigns and the causes that younger people can engage in and link it with Yawm al-Quds and link it with the meaning of the month of Ramadan. There's a reason why these two things are intertwined. Yawm al-Quds can't be an event that happens any other time of the year. It is tied with the meaning of Shahr Ramadan, and we have to preserve them, inshallah. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by the right of this last Friday of the month of Ramadan, that inshallah we can continue to read, study, learn, and act upon what the exhortations of the Imam are telling us in this letter. And we ask really that we're able to respond to the calls of those who are being oppressed and are disenfranchised in the world, especially the Muslims. We know already what the tradition has to say about our responsibilities and what it means to allow these calls and these cries to fall on deaf ears. We ask Allah to give us the power, the spirit, the courage to respond to these calls and to dedicate ourselves to the advancement of the Islamic cause and the human cause, inshallah. Walhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wassalamu alaikum jami'an. Rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
الرحيم اللهم إني أفتتح الثناء بحمدك وأنت مسدد للصواب بمنك وأيقنت أنك أنت أرحم الراحمين في موضع العفو والرحمة وأشد المعاقبين في موضع النكال والنقمة وأعظم المتجبرين في موضع الكبرياء والعظمة اللهم أذنت لي في دعائك ومسألتك فاسمع يا سميع مدحتي وأجب يا رحيم دعوتي وأقل يا غفور عثرتي فكم يا إلهي من كربة قد فرجتها وهموم قد كشفتها وعثرة قد أقلتها ورحمة قد نشرتها وحلقة بلاء قد فككتها الحمد لله الذي لم يتخذ صاحبة ولا ولدا ولم يكن له شريك في الملك ولم يكن له ولي من الذل وكبره تكبيرا الحمد لله بجميع محامده كلها على جميع نعمه كلها الحمد لله الذي لا مضاد له في ملكه ولا منازع له في أمره. الحمد لله الذي لا شريك له في خلقه ولا شبيه له في عظمته. الحمد لله الفاشي في الخلق أمره وحمده، الظاهر بالكرم مجده، الباسط بالجود يداه، الذي لا تنقص خزائنه ولا تزيده كثرة العطاء إلا جودا وكرما، إنه هو العزيز الوهاب. اللهم إني أسألك قليلا من كثير مع حاجة بي إليه عظيما، وغناك عنه قديم، وهو عندي كثير، وهو عليك سهل يسير. اللهم إن عفوك عن ذنبي وتجاوزك عن خطيئتي وصفحك عن ظلمي وسترك على قبيح عملي وحلمك عن كثير جرمي عندما كان من خطئي وعمدي، أطمعني في أن أسألك ما لا أستوجبه منك، الذي رزقتني من رحمتك وأريتني من قدرتك وعرفتني من إجابتك، فصرت أدعوك آمنا وأسألك مستأنسا، لا خائفا ولا وجلا، مدلا عليك فيما قصدت فيه إليك. فإن أبطأ عني عتبت بجهلي عليك، ولعل الذي أبطأ عني هو خير لي لعلمك بعاقبة الأمور. فلم أر مولا كريما أصبر على عبد لئيم منك علي يا رب. إنك تدعوني فأولي عنك، وتتحبب إلي فأتبغض إليك، وتتودد إلي فلا أقبل منك، كأن لي التطول عليك، فلم يمنعك ذلك من الرحمة لي والإحسان إلي والتفضل علي بجودك وكرمك. فارحم عبدك الجاهل وجد عليه بفضل إحسانك، إنك جواد كريم. الحمد لله مالك الملك مجري الفلك مسخر الرياح فالق الإصباح ديان الدين رب العالمين. الحمد لله على حلمه بعد علمه، والحمد لله على عفوه بعد قدرته، والحمد لله على طول أناته في غضبه، وهو قادر على ما يريد. الحمد لله خالق الخلق باسط الرزق فالق الإصباح ذي الجلال والإكرام والفضل والإنعام، الذي بعد فلا يرى وقربا فشهد النجوى تبارك وتعالى. الحمد لله الذي ليس له منازع يعادله ولا شبيه يشاكله ولا ظهير يعاضده. قهر بعزته الأعزاء وتواضع لعظمته العظماء فبلغ بقدرته ما يشاء. الحمد لله الذي يجيبني حين أناديه ويستر علي كل عورة وأنا أعصيه ويعظم النعمة علي فلا أجازي. فكم من موهبة هنيئة قد أعطاني وعظيمة مخوفة قد كفاني وبهجة مونقة قد أراني. فأثني عليه حامدا وأذكره مسبحا. الحمد لله الذي لا يهتك حجابه ولا يغلق بابه ولا يرد سائله ولا يخيب آمله. الحمد لله الذي يؤمن الخائفين وينجي الصالحين ويرفع المستضعفين ويضع المستكبرين ويهلك ملوكا ويستخلف آخرين. والحمد لله قاصم الجبارين مبير الظالمين مدرك الهاربين نكال الظالمين صريخ المستصرخين موضع حاجات الطالبين معتمد المؤمنين. الحمد لله الذي من خشيته ترعد السماء وسكانها وترجف الأرض وعمارها وتموج البحار ومن يسبح في غمراتها. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. الحمد لله الذي يخلق ولم يخلق ويرزق ولا يرزق ويطعم ولا يطعم ويميت الأحياء ويحيي الموتى وهو حي لا يموت بيده الخير وهو على كل شيء قدير. اللهم صل على محمد عبدك ورسولك وأمينك وصفيك وحبيبك وخيرتك من خلقك وحافظ سرك ومبلغ رسالاتك أفضل وأحسن وأجمل وأكمل وأزكى وأنمى وأطيب وأطهر وأسنى وأكثر ما صليت وباركت وترحمت وتحننت وسلمت على أحد من عبادك وأنبيائك ورسلك وصفوتك وأهل الكرامة عليك من خلقك. اللهم وصل على علي أمير المؤمنين ووصي رسول رب العالمين عبدك ووليك وأخي رسولك وحجتك على خلقك وآيتك الكبرى والنبأ العظيم وصل على الصديقة الطاهرة فاطمة سيدة نساء العالمين، وصل على صبطي الرحمة وإمامي الهدى الحسن والحسين سيدي شباب أهل الجنة، وصل على أئمة المسلمين علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي والخلف الهادي المهدي، حججك على عبادك وأمنائك في بلادك صلاة كثيرة دائمة. اللهم وصل على ولي أمرك القائم المؤمل والعدل المنتظر، وحفه بملائكتك المقربين، وأيده بروح القدس يا رب العالمين. اللهم اجعله الداعي إلى كتابك والقائم بدينك، استخلفه في الأرض كما استخلفت الذين من قبله، مكن له دينه الذي ارتضيته له، أبدله من بعد خوفه أمنا، يعبدك لا يشرك بك شيئا. اللهم أعزه وأعزز به، وانصره وانتصر به، وانصره نصرا عزيزا، وافتح له فتحا يسيرا، واجعل له من لدنك سلطانا نصيرا. اللهم أظهر به دينك وسنة نبيك حتى لا يستخفي بشيء من الحق مخافة أحد من الخلق. اللهم إنا نرغب إليك في دولة كريمة تعز بها الإسلام وأهله، وتذل بها النفاق وأهله، وتجعلنا فيها من الدعاة إلى طاعتك والقادة إلى سبيلك، وترزقنا بها كرامة الدنيا والآخرة. اللهم ما عرفتنا من الحق فحملناه، وما قصرنا عنه فبلغناه. اللهم المم به شعثنا، واشعب به صدعنا، وارتق به فتقنا، وكثر به قلتنا، وأعزز به ذلتنا، وأغن به عائلنا، واقض به عن مغرمنا، واجبر به فقرنا، وسد به خلتنا، ويسر به عسرنا، وبيض به وجوهنا، وفك به أسرنا، وأنجح به طلبتنا، وأنجز به مواعيدنا، واستجب به دعوتنا، وأعطنا به سؤلنا، وبلغنا به من الدنيا والآخرة آمالنا، وأعطنا به فوق رغبتنا يا خير المسؤولين وأوسع المعطين. اشف به صدورنا، وأذهب به غيظ قلوبنا، واهدنا به لما اختلف فيه من الحق بإذنك إنك تهدي من تشاء إلى صراط مستقيم. وانصرنا به على عدوك وعدونا إله الحق آمين. اللهم إنا نشكو إليك فقد نبينا صلواتك عليه وآله وغيبة ولينا وكثرة عدونا وقلة عددنا وشدة الفتن بنا وتظاهر الزمان علينا. فصل على محمد وآله وأعنا على ذلك بفتح منك تعجله وبضر تكشفه ونصر تعزه وسلطان حق تظهره ورحمة منك تجللناها وعافية منك تلبسناها برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. صل على محمد وآله الطاهرين.